Hello Year 6, I'm joined by Pugwash today. He says hello. Okay, now chapter 13 of The Lion Boy. The mangy cat sprang onto the arm of the beautiful figurehead, stalked straight down deck, not caring who saw him, twitching his nose and following the smell of the lions. When he reached the lion cabin, he lay down in the shade and waited for Charlie. When Charlie saw the mangled piece of paper between his teeth, his heart leapt. The cat opened one eye and then opened his mouth hugely. His breath was horrible. Charlie delicately took the piece of paper and, skewering it from a sharp little cat's tooth, he stared at the cat and then quietly slipped behind the lion cabin. He unfolded the paper. He read it. Dear Charles, I'm sorry to hear you are out sailing all the time instead of being in class. You know too much sea air is bad for you. Daddy and I are enjoying our boat trip, though it's still a bit of a mystery tour. The food is good, and there's a lovely marmalade cat here who's very friendly. I hope this gets through to you. We'll let you know where we'll be staying when we get there. Please also tell me which field trips Brother Jerome is planning for you. Love you so much and miss you. Be a good little boy. I know you will. Your ever-loving Mummy. His eyes filled with tears and his heart filled with joy. They were alive. They were okay. They were being fed. They had a clever cat looking out for them. They got his message. They understood his code. They knew he was looking for them. They didn't think he should have done it, but they accepted it. They were going to keep in touch with him. Charlie stood up, his face almost breaking with the strength of his smile. His face was all screwed up with joy, his eyes like diamonds stuck in. There behind the lion cabin he did a little dance, clenching his fist and jumping from foot to foot with joy, trying not to make any noise, bursting with happiness. The mangy black cat was gazing at him patiently. Charlie stopped jumping for a moment. Thank you, he said simply. This is the best thing that has ever happened to me. You have done the kindest thing anybody has ever done for me. Good, said the cat. So do I get a refreshing beverage as a demonstration of your appreciation then, or what? Oh, yes, cried Charlie, and he tucked the letter into his pocket and raced to the galley to scrounge milk, fashion a small piece of cake, on principle, because cake was a treat, though he didn't know if the cat would like it. The cat wolfed the cake and a tin of anchovies, then looked up. Do you want some more? Asked Charlie. Yes, said the cat. Charlie fetched him more. Then he said, Can you wait? Can you take a reply? Can you find them in Paris? No, said the cat. Oh, said Charlie, his face full on. He couldn't think what to say. It was like being shown a bicycle on Christmas Day and then being told, oh, no, it's not for you. The cat looked up. Well, I could, he said. I wasn't planning, but if it's entirely necessary for your intellectual and emotional peace of mind, I suppose I could. Seeing as it's you and them. The cat was, to be honest, thinking about all the restaurants in Paris, all the fish heads and half-eaten lobster shells, and dustbins full of bits of deliciousness that would be waiting for him in the compost heaps behind those restaurants. If you insist, he said, if you twist my forelimb, I don't suppose I've much choice. His mouth was watering already. Fantastic, said Charlie, fantastic, because I'll need to know where they are and where they're heading, and if you can take messages between us, then, so have you seen my mum and dad? No, said the cat. I got the message of some pouncy bloody posh girl at Le Havre, and she got it off a marmalade. Charlie smiled. That would be the one they mentioned. It seemed to bring his parents closer. This cat knew a cat who knew a cat who'd been with my parents. But yeah, I'm acquainted with the history of who they are. Yeah, and you being their appendage. Course I am, the cat was saying. Charlie jerked his head up. He was about to say, who are they then, when he remembered how he had scared off the French riverboat cat, who had become worried that he might not be himself. Take it easy, Charlie, he told himself. I was wondering, he said casually, why they seem to be so famous here. Of course at home everybody knows them, but I didn't realise cats in France would know them too. Because what they've done for all cats, said the cat, dropping a slightly sneery, half-joking tone and becoming something quite serious. Charlie was genuinely surprised, because this cat was so mangy and bald-bottomed and had so far shown no manners to speak of. They're not proud. They're not saying this kind of cat's better than that kind. Ever since the allegory started apparating, your parents have been on their side and all. What they've done, the work has been the best thing any humans have ever done for us. Obviously, they're not succeeded yet, but they're professional enterprises. Well, it could be the saving of us. All of us. We don't want humans to hate us. Your parents are single-handedly saving the whole relationship between cats and humans, and between cats and Alangeries, if it goes right. Of course, cats all over the world know about him and honour him, plus there's you, of course. Charlie was dumbstruck. Alangeries work to save the cat-human relationship. You, of course. This was the mystery, no doubt about it. How to find out more without giving away that he knew so little. Ah, yes, he said, trying to sound intelligent and well-informed. There's been very few humans capable and willing to talk cat, and I'm very honoured to meet you, said the black cat, in quite a humble way. Very honoured to be of service. Any cat would be, even the Alingeries. I know a lot of cats hate him, but it's not their fault, is it? He looked a bit embarrassed. He seemed to be waiting for some kind of reaction from Charlie, and a little as if he wasn't sure what the reaction would be, or indeed if he really wanted a reaction at all. In fact, he looked as if he now realised, of course, it would be a bad reaction, so he was off down the pub and forgot he ever asked. All this in about 5 seconds. No, said Charlie, hoping this was the answer that the cat wanted. His mind was racing. Alangeries are not all bad, the cat continued. I know some have gone off specially to live wild in the country so as not to do any harm. Some of them are miserable about what they do and about what's been done to them. Miserable. He spoke with passion, but then he seemed to notice that Charlie was having trouble following. He sighed. Anyway, look, he said, you better praise your reply so I can get on my bicyclette. Charlie liked the way he talked. Give me a few minutes, he said, and went into the rope locker. He thought very hard about what to say to his parents. He had a lot of questions to ask, and he thought it better to ask his parents directly than to ask the cat. But he couldn't ask directly. He had to ask in their special code. Darling Mummy and Daddy, it was really good to get your letter. Everything's going okay for me. Brother Jerome is going to take me to Paris, which is, I think, where you are going too. He stopped to think. He didn't want to say Paris, in case anyone read the letter and would learn that he was coming after them. How could he put it? He thought hard. Of course, there was a girl on the block called Paris. Her sister was called Rita. He started again. Brother Jerome is taking me to visit Rita's sister, and I know you are expected there too. If you get there first, try not to leave too soon, as I hope I can see you there. How to ask about the Alangeries. He strongly felt that his mum and dad would know what they were, but who else knew? And how risky would it be to ask about them? And come to think of it, how could his parents explain them in a reply, in a code? Perhaps he should just ask the cat after all. Or no, he thought of something. I'm doing a project on pet cats. I wish I could ask you about it. Please tell me all you can when you reply. He couldn't think of anything better. He hoped they'd get it. Was there anything else he needed to tell them? Could he risk saying about the circus in case they could escape and come to him? No, he didn't want the baddies, whoever they were, seeing circus and mentioning it to Raffy, him putting it together with the roaring down the telephone, and he and the lions would be leaving anyway. He finished off. I am being a very good little boy, like you said. Hope to see you very soon. I will bring some friends, bigger kids, to Rita's sister. Lots and lots of love from Charles. He folded it tiny, went outside round the back of their lion cabin and tucked the note into the black cat's collar. Crike of a lot easier than carrying it in my gob, said the black cat gratefully. What's your name? Asked Charlie. Sergi, said the cat. Why? Asked Charlie. He didn't mean to be rude. The name just didn't seem quite... This cat looked like he should be called Bandit. Me dad like Romanov, said Sergi. I'll be off now. Charlie said, Sergi, who else human speaks cat? Well, nobody at the moment, only you. Van Emberg did, the lion trainer, and King Solomon, obviously, St. Francis, the patron saint of animals, and St. John, who extricated the thorn out of some lion's paw some centuries ago. No one understood how he could do it, and that's one reason he got sainted. You could be a saint, maybe. Charlie, aha, Hugh Lofting, who wrote those books, you know. Dr. Dolittle, Daniel, of course, and the Bible, and the Lion's Den. Some others who just thought they were off their noodles. Not everybody knows what to do with it. You're one of a rare and honoured tradition, you know. There's not a lot like you. Charlie was touched by this mangy cat's goodwill. So when Malcolm used cat words to the lions. He'd probably got them off Van Amber. More likely off Daniel or the gladiator, said Sergi. Ask those lions. Lions are big on history. Thanks, Sergi, said Charlie. Come back soon. Sergi flicked his ear and was gone, off on the road to Paris, to ask all the Parisian cats where the famous English couple, the black man and the white woman whose son was that boy, were being kept prisoner. I don't think Raffy knows where I am, Charlie thought on his way to lunch. If he did, he'd be here by now. He's got a car. He didn't think that even if Raffy didn't know where he was, he might at any moment find out. Charlie ate his lunch with Julius and Hans. Julius, he said, what's an allogenary? Don't know, said Julius. Not a phrase he used very often. He looked a bit surprised. What is it? I don't know either, said Charlie, and then noticing that Julius was about to ask where Charlie had heard the word and so on, he decided to change the subject. Tell me about the famous circus people in Paris, he said. Are there any? Are there any? Exclaimed Julius. There's a bucket loads. All the best circus people live in Paris. They've got the best halls, apart from in the Empire homelands, of course. There's the Carrique Fernando on Boulevard Roquenhort and the Carrère de Hiver on Boulevard des Filles du Cavalieri. That's really fine, with 12 sides at each corner and equestrian statues by the entrance and oil lamps and a cupola on top with a winged figure. There's Franconi's Olympic. It occurred to Charlie that if he had been going to stay any longer on the circuit, he would have to get a dictionary for talking to Julius. Sergi used long words as well, but Charlie had the feeling he just used them for fun, whereas Julius was pretty serious. He really wanted to talk to Julius about the lion escape. He just knew that Julius would be full of useful knowledge and good ideas, but he couldn't tell him. It wasn't safe, and it wasn't fair on Julius, because just by knowing, Julius would have to betray either his new friend or his circus. So Charlie would just have to get Julius to answer his questions without arousing any suspicion about why he was asking them. This did make him feel a little bit uncomfortable, but he had no choice. Well, said Charlie, sounding impressed, which was easy because he was impressed. And tell me about the people. He was just keeping the conversation going while he worked out how to drop in the questions he needed answers to. Well, there are some fabulous clowns. There's Povo, Charlie Caroli, Pimpo Coco, the Frattini brothers. Van Armour was here with his lions before he died. You know about him, of course. And John Cooper and Jacob Dreisbach. He more or less invented the Facility axe. Van Amberg was fantastic, but Dreisbach just thought it was all too gentle. The audience would like some more whip-cracking and fighty stuff. Macomi hates Dreisbach. Did you know? No, why? Because of Mabel Stark, continued Julius. Who? You know Mabel Stark. You must do. Everybody knows about her. You really don't know anything, do you, Charlie? She's a fantastic tiger trainer. She's amazing. She does all the things the men do and more. She really loves her tigers. All the trainers say it's about love, but here you can see it is. It's like she was its mum or something, and licks her hair and hugs her. And she's really beautiful and wears white leather costumes, and everybody's in love with her, including Dreisbach and Macomo. Macomo's in love with a lady, squeaked Charlie, amazed. He couldn't imagine it. Yes, cried Julius. It is funny, isn't it? And he was going to marry her, only then Dreisbach, he was her teacher, told her not to, and she didn't, and so Macomo hates him. Why did Dreisbach tell her not to marry him, said Charlie. Julius' face changed and he looked suddenly embarrassed. He said. Why, said Charlie. Julius frowned, screwed up his courage, and then said quickly, because he's one of those stupid people who think black and white people shouldn't marry each other. He didn't look at Charlie as he said it, so he didn't see Charlie's face begin to burn with a blush. Of course Charlie knew there were people like that, and of course he didn't like to hear about it. But as well as he knew that Julius was upset at having to bring the subject up, he appreciated him being straightforward about it. Stupid pig, said Charlie, trying to sound cheerful, when Julius looked up gratefully and said, Yes, stupid pig, so we hate him. Charlie smiled at Julius and Hans, who had stood nervously on the sidelines of this bit of the conversation, said quietly, I hate him too. There's a small pause, and then Charlie said, So where's Mabel now? Oh, she's in Paris, said Julius, glad to change the subject. That's why everyone's so nervous about the show, because all the top Parisian circus people will come, or they won't come, and they'll like it, or they won't like it, so everyone's in a bit of a tiz. Do you think Mabel will come? Asked Charlie. Bound to, and she'll bring Lois Roth. That's her boyfriend. He's a lion trainer, and he's Hungarian and wears these boots almost up to his bottom. Charlie was thinking furiously. A brilliant idea had dropped into his lap like a ripe fruit off a tree. Mabel must lose her boyfriend and boots and invite Makoma to dinner after the show. Then he would be out of the way for the lions to escape. So how to get a woman he didn't know to invite out a man she hadn't seen since? How long ago was the Mabel Makoma thing? He asked Julius. A year or two, I suppose, said Julius. Makoma still looks thunderous if her name comes up. But he loves her, right? Oh, yeah? So why would he look thunderous? Wouldn't he be pleased to see her? I don't know. I suppose he thinks she doesn't like him anymore. Charlie knew from listening when his mum and her friends were discussing grown-ups' love's lives that there was no logic when it came to grown-ups being in love, but he was pretty sure that if Makoma were to get a message from Mabel saying, I miss you and I want to see you, he would go along. But how to get her to send such a message? Charlie was halfway through his sticky toffee pudding when he had this most brilliant idea. Mabel didn't have to send the message. As long as the message had been Mabel's name on it, it didn't matter who actually sent it. And then he almost laughed. He was so pleased with his brilliance. Mabel could receive a message from Makoma too, only it wouldn't be from Makoma. And each of them would think the other had invited them, and each would be flattered and curious and go along, and it would be ages before they realised that they had been tricked, by which time Charlie and the lions would be off rescuing Mum and Dad. Charlie actually did start giggling. What is it? Said Hans, with a bit of sticky toffee sauce trickling down his chin. Oh, I'm just happy, said Charlie. Really, said Julius, but what about your parents? Can't be sad all the time, said Charlie. You can get tired of it. Julius looked at him considering, and Charlie wondered if he suspected something, but how could he? What's the swankiest restaurant in Paris then? Charlie asked. Oh, it's full of swanky restaurants. One of Dad's favourite is Gers Billy in the Marius, but he can't afford to go there. It's very expensive and you always have to book. Thinking about it, Charlie realised he was going to have to work fast, get their phone numbers and text them, then there'd be no problems with either of them saying, but that's not her handwriting. Then I'd have to ring the restaurant and book a table. What time does the show end? How long would it take them to get from the ship? It's good if it's not too close, because that would give him and the lions much more time. Charlie felt like a criminal, making sure all the details were right and that he would not be suspected. Is the Marius near where we docked? Charlie asked innocently. Why? Demanded Hans. And Charlie realised he'd better start asking his questions to different people if he didn't want to have questions asked of him. So, phone numbers, he could start that night. First he had to run the plan past the lions. It was easy because Makoma was snoozing. The medicine must have been working. As the trainer snored on the floor in his crimson cloak, Charlie started to tell the young lion and Alcina what he planned. But before he could do so, the young lion hissed at him. About time, Venice! What do you mean, Venice? Said Charlie. A nasty-looking black cat turned up and said he was sorry he couldn't stay. Wasn't able to delay his personal business with his exact phrase and to tell you Venice. Sergi, Charlie smiled. Venice, he'd seen pictures. The streets are full of water. Venice was beautiful and strange. He thought quickly. So would they get his letter? Or Sergi would take it to them? Would he? Yes, Charlie thought. He was rude and mangy, but Charlie was pretty sure he wasn't dishonest, and he had really seemed to care about Charlie's parents. Why else had he travelled to bring the first letter all this way? Had they left yet? He asked. He didn't say, said the young lion. Well, thought Charlie, if I don't get to them in time in Paris, I'll just have to go to Venice, which was south, more or less, and closer to Africa, so the lions could come with him. There was no point in wondering why Mum and Dad were being taken there. He only hoped they'd stay long enough for him to catch up. He was pretty sure you could get a train to Venice from Paris. In the old days there was one called the Orient Express, which went from Paris to Venice to Istanbul. He made a note in his head, train from Paris to Venice. So then he told the lions his plan about Mabel. They were delighted. "It's a great idea," said the young lion. "Brilliant," said Alcina. "And it may just work," said a third voice. They all looked round. It was the oldest lion, standing up in his cage and looking over at them. "He's crazy about that woman, always was. He'd do anything for her. Certainly go and have dinner with her in a restaurant, and I think she would too." Charlie and the young lion grinned at each other. Makoma was dopey. The oldest lion had perked up, and the plan had his agreement. "Best get on the telephone then, boy who speaks cat." Charlie's brain was ticking away, thinking through all the possibilities. He felt wonderfully intelligent and in control. Details, alternatives for when things went wrong. That was what you needed, knowing what was what, for example. "Where's the key now?" he asked. The young lion nodded. "Over there," he said. There it was, big old key on a hook, plain old-fashioned, couldn't be simpler. "Well, that's all right then," said Charlie, "and we need to think about where to go next." He had made a decision. He and the lions, once escaped, could not hang around where the circus was. They'd be followed and caught. If he didn't hear back from his parents or a cat telling him where they were in Paris, he would go straight on to Venice. In the back of his mind, he heard Ralphie's tight, angry, violent voice. "Just stay there and I'll be along soon to get you. All right? I'll be along soon to get you." He doesn't know, Charlie told himself firmly. He couldn't, but couldn't and doesn't are two different things. Worry about something you can do something about, he told himself. In a very short time, he'd be standing on a French street corner with 6 lions to look after, and he needed to know what way to turn. Plans in general had to become plans in particular. The oldest lion smiled down at him. "I have some ideas, boy. Go and telephone now." "Yes, sir," said Charlie. "By the way, does anyone know what an allogenary is?" The lions all just gazed at him. "No," they said. "What is it?" Huddled and stiff in the hold of the motorboat, Magdalene was whispering. "I think we have to try to escape," she murmured. "Fair enough, in the submarine we couldn't do anything, but next time we're transferred, we just knock them down and run. We can't carry on like this. Well, maybe you can, but I can't. Charlie's out there somewhere. He needs us. He's not safe if he has. And I'm going mad here, doing nothing. We must do something." Aniba was sitting by her, holding his knees. It was cramped in there, warmer than the sub, but hardly more comfortable. They couldn't stand up and were just half lying on sacks or something that felt like rice. "If we run," he said, his voice strained by whispering, by trying to be patient. They seemed to have had this conversation many times before. "If we run, assuming we get away, how would we find out who hired these fools to kidnap us? How would we find out what they want? We couldn't go home. They could just come back for us again, or for Charlie. We wouldn't be safe. We have to stay to find out what it's all about. Let's assume that it's about the asthma cure. Do we assume that?" "Yes," said Magdalene in a small voice. "So who wants it? Who wants us? Or who's scared of us? Or thinks it's so important," said Magdalene. "I know, love, but..." She was thinking about Charlie. "I know," said Aniba, "but he'll be no safer than us until the thing is sorted out. So that's what we are going to do. Get there, wherever it is, identify our enemy, deal with it, sort it out." "Sort it out," said Magdalene sadly. "Yes, if only..." Suddenly the boat jolted. Boxes fell on their heads. "Yow!" cried Magdalene as a packing case of sardines fell against her. "Shut up in there," came a voice from outside. Winner's voice. The boat was docking. Charlie was extremely relieved to hear that the oldest lion had some ideas, because he hadn't. However, he did know what to do when short of ideas. His mum and dad had both drummed it into him. When you don't know what to do, get more information. So after the Lions' afternoon rehearsal and practice, and setting up and putting away the ring cage, and having a discussion with Makome about the final details of the performance, Charlie went to see Signor Lucidi to find out exactly what would happen once they were in Paris. He found him lying on his front on the floor of his cabin, with the youngest of his children walking along his backbone. "Gosh!" cried Charlie. "Is this part of the act? Use your dad's spine as a low wire?" "Ah, no," groaned the acrobat. "I wish it was, but it is not. It is for the pain of my back. Carrying so many of my family makes me hurt, and if I'm to be told the too cool for 20 seconds in Paris, then I must be strong and not hurting. We are practicing too much and I hurt. That is all." "What's the tuchel?" asked Charlie. "Most difficult human pyramid," said CG. "Everybody up on Daddy's legs, 4 people, plus on Daddy's shoulders 5 people, plus on Daddy's head, my bambino here, Oh, Daddy's head too. The pride of the family name, because if I don't hold it 20 seconds at least, all Paris will laugh at the name of Lucidi. Gosh, said Charlie again, standing upright with 10 people stand on you. That must be hard. So tell me, what happens when we get to Paris? Charlie asked. Well, tomorrow morning we're going to the Canal Saint-Denis. We should get to our stopping place near the Bastille a few hours later, said CG, between grunts of pleasure as his little boy's heel dug along the spine. It's convenient. The canal joins onto the river. We dock, we parade, we get everything ready. Then the next day everybody comes. We perform. We all go out and get drunk to celebrate. We stay 3 weeks, then we are back to normal, following the canals down to the Mediterranean Sea, performing all the way. Then we perform along the Italian coast, all the holiday towns and fishing towns down to Rome and Naples, then over to North Africa for the winter, and up the Spanish coast and back to Marseilles, and who knows where, maybe around Britain again, maybe to the Caribbean and the Empire homelands. We can go anywhere on this boat. Anyway, Major Tib wants to take us. Listening to the list of places, Charlie wished and wished that his parents were safely at home where parents ought to be, and the lions could be happy in captivity, and that he could stay with the circus forever and ever. But he couldn't. Is the Bastille near Marius? Asked Charlie. Yes, it's very close, said CG. It's close to everywhere. The university, the station, the river, the canal, the police, the courts of justice. Charlie ticked all these off in his head. Police and courts of justice, oh dear, the station, aha. He was just about to ask Signor Lucidi if the train was the best way to Italy from Paris, when he realised that would be a very stupid thing to do. After he and the lions were gone, Macomb and Major Tib would ask everybody if they knew anything about it, and if Lucidi said he had been inquiring about routes to Italy, then everybody would know that's where they'd gone, and they'd come after them, and they'd be extremely angry. Charlie resolved to get a map of the area. Back out on deck, the little envelope was flashing on his telephone. He pressed the button, fancy slime and git. He took a breath and called the message. You stupid little kid, Charlie. You're on completely the wrong track. You haven't got a clue, have you? I'm here with your parents now. Your mum's really ugly, isn't she? And you know what? You're not going to find them. No way. And you know what else? They don't want you. Why do you think they left without you? Because they don't want you. Who would? Little squirt like you? Uppity little squid at that, stupid uppity little squid who couldn't find his uppity parents if they were squashed on the motorway under his nose. So, as you're obviously not going to get here on your own, I'll be along to get you soon, like I said. The voice was low and vicious and went on and on. Charlie listened in a frozen, horrified fascination, unable to hang out for just a little too long. That night they were due to enter Paris. They stopped early at a place called Chateau, found the dock and rested up for an early start the next morning. Charlie went about his duties chanting, "You don't fool me, you don't fool me, you don't fool me," under his breath, trying to drown out the echo of Raffy's nasty voiced and nastier words. "I'll beat you, Raffy," he repeated over and over. "I've got lions. I've got 6 beautiful, strong, huge killer lions with massive teeth and sharp, hard claws that could cut you in half. Have you seen how big a lion's claw is, Raffy? Do you know how many they have? They're like carving knives, Raffy, and they keep them tucked in their paws so they stay good and sharp. I've got lions, Raffy, and all you've got is a nasty tongue." "What are you muttering?" demanded Macomo. "I have a headache. Stay quiet." Charlie was glad he had a headache. He hoped the drugs had caused it. Later on, sitting on deck with a sleeping bag round his shoulders and Perrot's old street map of Paris on his knee, Charlie discovered that the Canal Saint-Denis would take them to the Canal Saint-Martin, which would take them back to the sign in the centre of Paris at the Porte de Plaza de Paris Arsenal, Bastille for short, because it was very close to where the old prison called the Bastille used to be. And the Murray's was close enough to be a sensible choice of area for Macomb and Mabel to go out to dinner, but not so close as to make it risky. Also, it was in the opposite direction to the station. Things were beginning to fall in place. Above him, the small high moon soared across the night sky. Below it made a gleaming path towards him across the river's waters. He tried hard to still his jumping mind, and for a few minutes he let himself wonder about what the barge cat had said, about the story of Aligneries, his parents' work, the great mystery. He couldn't bear to look at the telephones. The possibility of more Raffy's threats, plus an inevitable emptiness of his mother's phone. No, it was too depressing. Why wasn't anyone ringing his mum, any of her workmates or her friends? People to say, come over and visit, or Brother Jerome saying, why isn't Charlie coming to lessons? Charlie didn't know that Rafi had told all his family, friends and relations that they had to leave suddenly for Africa. He just felt as if he and his family had been dropped off the edge of the world and nobody cared. Not that the circus people wouldn't care, but they were all new, and apart from the lions, he couldn't tell them what was on his mind, and he couldn't tell the lions how scared he was, and how he wished he didn't have to do this. Late in the evenings, he wanted someone he had always known, someone from home. He read his letter again, thought of the friendly cats who had helped, wondered again if he could trust Sergi well. He had no choice. Wondered again about the legionaries, wondered for the 1,000th time what his parents were working on that made them heroes to cats. And he was working to find them, so let's get on with it, he said to himself toughly. Before the moon started to look too sad and the night grew too lonely, get on with it. So he began to track down the phone numbers he needed, and very complicated it was too. Then the number of the restaurant was constantly engaged. Charlie really hoped he wouldn't have to find another excuse to ask Julius about swanky restaurants. It was such an unlikely thing for someone like Charlie to need to know about. By the time he went to bed, he had sent 2 messages, booked a restaurant table, and found out the trains to Venice went from Gare d'Austerlitz, which was the station right across the river from Bastille, and that the train left at midnight. Here are the messages he sent. Mabel, such a long time. Please come to show on Friday, and afterwards to Chesbally. I will meet you there. Macomo. And to Macomo he sent, Macomo, such a long time. Macomo, such a long time. I'm coming to show on Friday. Please join me afterwards. Chesbally, Mabel. He really hoped he had got the tone right. Who knew what grown-ups wrote to each other? But he had seen invitations with things like afterwards and please join me written on them. Oh well, either it would work or it wouldn't, and if it didn't, they'd just have to think of something else. He felt a little sick at the thought. End of chapter 13. Bye for now.